Hi everyone, my name is Jared. The article I will be presenting on is titled The Space Shuttle Challenger Disaster, a Study in Organizational Ethics, written by Don McKenna. The Space Shuttle Challenger disaster occurred on January 28, 1986, roughly 73 seconds after liftoff. The disaster was mainly caused by faulty primary and secondary O-ring seals on the shuttle's right solid rocket booster, resulting in the untimely deaths of 6 astronauts and 1 schoolteacher. The article, which was published on February 15, 2008, begins by addressing this root cause as well as the flaws in NASA's process regarding the launch decision. According to McKenna, there was no system in place that required all levels of management to verify the safety of the launch prior to liftoff. Additionally, NASA was pressured to meet specific launch quotas, causing a reduction in the quality assurance and greater emphasis placed on meeting deadlines. Because of this, NASA upper management opted to go ahead with the launch instead of reevaluating their goals and prioritizing the safety of the crew. McKenna argues primarily that the individual cannot be relied upon to make completely proper decisions when the use of technology carries such a significant amount of risk. A major factor leading to the disaster was a lack of proper communication between NASA upper management and the O-ring design engineers at Morton Thiokol. These issues presented in the article were key in determining the organizational causes of the Challenger disaster and uncovering NASA's shortcomings within the Space Shuttle program. Some ethical questions to consider are firstly, whose responsibility was it to ensure the shuttle was safe for liftoff? Should the Thiokol engineers be held responsible for not being more assertive in stating their concerns about the O-ring seal joints? Or should the managers be held responsible for not seeking out the concerns of the engineers, knowing they had deadlines to meet? Secondly, is it even right to blame a singular person or team for the Challenger disaster? Acknowledging shortcomings on both the engineering and managerial teams is important, but is the way to uncover and improve upon these shortcomings to admit everyone is at fault, or to narrow down the search and identify a specific issue so it does not occur again in the future? Finally, following the clear impact of the disaster on NASA, as well as the general public opinion on the Space Shuttle program, how can we justify future efforts in space exploration? McKenna proposes a few solutions to NASA's organizational issues that were made prevalent as a result of the Challenger disaster. Most evidently, NASA's communication system needed a drastic rework. Exchange of critical information about safety from the engineers to management was somehow blocked, likely due to groupthink or frustration. The article does mention that one of the Thiokol engineers, Arnold Thompson, made concerns about the launch extremely clear, but the management would not listen or hear to what he had to say. The authoritative powers of higher-level management would not be challenged by listening to the concerns of Thiokol engineers, so changing the way the managers at NASA viewed their organizational structure was in order as well. The article then proposes that to minimize the likelihood of future disasters from occurring due to technological failure, there needs to be a wider variety of external controls and monitoring mechanisms to give objective and unchallengeable warnings when the safety of a launch is compromised. Individuals are susceptible to organizational pressure and looming deadlines, which can lead to important details being overlooked as seen in the Challenger disaster. These proposed solutions strongly support the ethical framework of utilitarianism, which states that the main goal of any project or undertaking is to prioritize the interests of the individuals directly involved. Under this doctrine, actions taken by people can be considered correct if they benefit society as a whole at the cost of as few people as possible. Throughout McKenna's article, he repeatedly mentions that NASA ultimately failed to prioritize the safety of the crew and the mission, and allowed organizational pressures and time constraints to push the mission forward despite growing design concerns. His arguments favor the well-being of the crew as well as everyone else involved in the Challenger disaster. By emphasizing the lives of humans over the time constraints implemented by NASA or by its customers, the majority of people involved can experience the best possible outcome, despite the potential loss of profits. The most desired outcome in this case is the survival of the whole crew, and the success of the mission, rather than keeping an ambitious schedule set by NASA in the first place. To utilize a different perspective on the Space Shuttle Challenger disaster, I found an article that addresses the issue from a different time frame. The Challenger disaster, Assessing the Implications, is an article written by M. Mitchell Waldrop on February 14, 1986, just a few weeks after the disaster occurred. This article was particularly interesting to me due to the proximity of the publication date to when the actual disaster happened, which I thought could provide an interesting perspective on society's initial reaction. Waldrop begins by addressing possible causes of the disaster, followed by how NASA's ambitious plans in the following years would be affected now that the Challenger was out of commission. He recognized NASA's increasing ambitions when it came to the Space Shuttle program, and goes into how they may have prioritized meeting a planned schedule over proper communication on the safety details of the launch, similar to the main article. However, since the direct cause of the disaster was not yet known at the time, the article takes more into account what the future of spaceflight would look like, given the technological dangers made obvious by the Challenger disaster. The main article written by McKenna focuses strictly on the ethical issues presented by the Challenger disaster, and makes a firm case towards the cause and repercussions of the event. Thus, I believe McKenna's article provides slightly better analysis on the ethical issues compared to Waldrop's article. To finish off, here are some discussion questions to ponder about related to ethical dilemmas presented by the Challenger disaster. 1. Should there have been more severe repercussions as an administration for NASA's negligence during the Challenger flight? 2. Under what ethical criteria do we determine whether a large-scale operation, such as the Challenger launch, has been properly tested for safety in the event of technological failure? 3. Does the Challenger disaster present a case for or against the use of space shuttles or other spacecraft for space tourism and operational purposes? Why or why not? 4. Should NASA allow more engineers and low-level managers to have a say in important safety procedure decisions? At what point are there too many points of view to take action effectively? Thanks for watching.